Hi, my name is Anna, and I thought I'd try the YouTube Newbie booktube tag. As you can see behind me, it's just a few days after Christmas, so the decorations are still up. I'm new to YouTube as a YouTuber, and I thought that I'll just try and do something that I actually enjoyed and see how it goes. So here I am. So I'll get right into the questions. The first one, why did you start this channel? Well, I was looking for something to do on YouTube just because I was finally being dragged into 2023 technology. I've never actually had a YouTube channel, but I've used YouTube like everybody else and watched a lot of clips like everybody else. But I'm not quite sure why I finally decided, let me just start a channel. Yeah, just recently I decided, let me give it a go. But I realised that starting a channel is not as easy as I thought it would be. A bit like an elitist sport. It seems that you have to put in the time and effort, and you have to know your sport. That's what it actually seems like with YouTube, to be a YouTuber. And even when I watch newbie booktubers, I just get the feeling that everybody's already done this before. They all know how to do it, even with all those many edits. Everybody's been there. But I'm actually quite psyched to do this whole thing. So I'm gonna keep this momentum going. So I really hope that this is gonna work. It does not have to be great. It just has to be something that I enjoy doing. So that's partly why. Another reason is I do enjoy reading books. The passion is there. But I haven't actually had the time to read books, or I haven't made the time to read books for a very long time. So I'm actually hoping that by starting a book channel that I motivate myself. Well, not motivate, the motivation is there, that I make myself accountable for reading books. So that is part of the reason why I started a book channel. The other reason is also that I would like to be part of a community where we're talking about books. I think I haven't actually really, I've read books for myself, but I've never actually spoken about books with others, discussed books with others. On occasions I have, but very rarely. My books have been very internal for myself. My internal discussions, if they're even there. I've had the odd book that I've perhaps discussed with my brother. The odd book that I've discussed with my mother-in-law, and that was We Need to Talk About Kevin. I read it. I think I read it because it must have been my brother who introduced it to me. And then I read it, and then I gave it to my mother-in-law, and she just rang me and had to discuss this book because it was actually worth discussing. The book that I discussed with my brother, or we didn't really discuss it, but the book that I read, that I then handed over to him, because it's normally the other way around, was The Master and Margareta. And that one I read because of my husband had read it many years ago during his younger days, and he told me about it. I think I might have even read this book in Swedish, but then I think I then bought the book in English, and because my Swedish isn't that good, bought the book in English, and then I introduced it to my brother, who actually did think it was a good book. Okay, now I seem to be digressing from the question, why did you start this channel? But that was part of it. It's the discussing, the talking about books, and perhaps getting a chance to reflect on the books, because I'm quite a superficial reader, so I feel sometimes that perhaps I need to think about the stuff I'm reading. Okay, question 2. What are some fun and unique things you bring to YouTube? Or it's probably bring to your YouTube book channel. Difficult one. I truly don't think I have anything unique to bring. I think, well, unique or unique. I think so much, just discussing booktubers, so much has been covered by so many booktubers, other booktubers, that it feels difficult to kind of find something unique that I'm going to bring, apart from perhaps myself. And that is if there isn't a clone out there exactly like me doing exactly the same thing. Otherwise, what I do hope I can bring in seriousness is some positiveness and something new. I hope there's something new, and if there isn't, well, just something positive. What I hope that I'll get from the YouTube book channel is, as I said, making me accountable to reading books. Finding the joy I used to have in reading books, and finding that peace, that stillness, that awareness of the content that I'm reading, and an escapism, I guess. That would be fun. So I'm looking forward to that. I also hope that that even the knowledge and the curiosity that comes from reading books and the inspiration of reading books comes back. And I'm also looking forward to that. Okay, question 3. What are you most excited about for your channel? Well, this one it's not too difficult. I think I'm very excited, one, to be creating a YouTube channel. I am really, really psyched about creating a YouTube channel. I've been telling other people, but just at the moment I don't dare tell them what it's about in case they start looking it up, but we'll see. I might tell my brothers because I think they'll be okay. I don't think they're gonna diss me or anything weird like that. Might be another thing about telling my kids because they might diss me. However, or perhaps they'll just think, wow, Mom has made a YouTube channel. Perhaps they'll just be so impressed. But anyway, yep, I'm really psyched about making a YouTube channel. I'm psyched about making a book channel. So that excitement is definitely there. I think the chance also to be able to talk about books with others and to be part of a community. I think I really am looking forward to being part of a community. Those are things that I'm excited about. And also the fact that by being part of a community, I'm going to perhaps be able to find books in a different genre that is not my own. I want to broaden the books that I read and find other books, because I used to find that when I went to bookshops, because I don't do that anymore really, or if I do, our bookshops here seem to be the selections are so small. Oh, the selections in English anyway, being in Sweden, that's probably not so surprising. The selections are very small, and also that I tended to go to the same books all the time just because I had no idea. What other books do I want to read? What other genre do I want to read? So I'm hoping that this book channel and the comments, the positive comments, help me broaden the type of book that I read. Okay, next question. Why do you love reading? Well, I do love reading because it is an escape, as many people say. It is an inspiration. It does take me to a different place altogether, and it kind of allows you just to be in your own world. If you find a good book that becomes so absorbing, you're in your own world and you're away. I guess that's what it means by escapism. Perhaps I'll just leave that one. Yeah, it takes you to your own world, and it can inspire. A good book can also be very satisfying. It can fill a gap that's missing or create a gap. It can leave you wanting, or yeah, you've got a burning desire to do that, and that longing is actually nice when you're really looking forward to a new book. That's very nice, and it's been a while. So that's why I do love reading. Let's see then. What questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? Just now I have no favourite booktubers because I haven't been on this channel long enough, and I've only actually just started thinking about booktube channels. Crazily enough, it's something that's I've never ever thought about. I'm not quite sure why. But considering I want to broaden my type of books, it's in itself, it's surprising that I've never actually thought about this. I don't even tend to read book reviews so much because I sometimes think that they have already decided on a book and and they judge it in a certain way that might not be my own judgment. So it would be colouring my judgment of a book I haven't yet read. so I tend to not read reviews too much. I have a bad tendency of looking at the cover of a book and then deciding whether I want to read it or not. But now I don't always just stop there, but I must say the cover of the book does play a big part. But again, digressing from the question, and I've forgotten what it was. What questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? I would actually ask them again, like many others have asked. Where do they find the time to read all those books? Like crazy many books. It seems like it takes me about 2 weeks to read one book, if not longer. That's one thing I would ask a favourite YouTuber. I would also ask them if being a booktuber has actually helped them to broaden their scope. That's to say, has it tempted them to read books that are not their normal, comfortable genre? Or are they almost limited because they're trying to focus on a certain group or a certain genre? Do they stop there and just read that type of book? I would hope that I wouldn't, let's just say it's not really a hope. I'm not going to go into a section where I just read a certain type of books, because I don't want to just stop there. I want to actually broaden my perspective on the books that I read, my scope, so that I can find other interests. My next question: what challenges will be the hardest with booktube? Well, I think the whole starting of a YouTube channel, that is a massive challenge. Oh my lord, this one, it's gonna be fun, just because I discovered that there's so much out there. There's so much you can use to create a YouTube channel if you want. That bit is also exciting. But then it also seems that all this thing about editing, all the production, how it looks, what you should use or not use, and things like that, how to aim at your audience or not aim at your audience, the book logo, your book, banner. It's exciting, and yet it's a bit daunting. Yeah, this is a challenge, I won't lie. That does seem like a big challenge. Another thing is time. Time, I figure, is going to be also a challenge. It is a rare commodity even now. But I have decided I'm going to do this. I am going to do this. I am going to find the time. I guess my plan now is just to perhaps try and, at max, try and create one YouTube clip a week. Because I want to keep this ball rolling. I think it would be good for me. For whatever reasons, I'm not sure. But I think the whole thing would be good for me. See, already I'm loving this. This is so cool. Absolutely. Okay, next question. When did you start reading, and what book series got you into reading? I actually don't know that I can answer this one very accurately, because I'm not actually sure what is being asked, or when. They mean that when did you start reading? Difficult to say. As kids, we were surrounded by books, and I know my dad, when we were younger, a lot younger, he had the children's Britannica encyclopedias. So even if we were too young to actually read and understand, well, to read and understand what the whole thing was about, we used to look at the pictures. So the introduction to books was from an early age. But if someone is going to say, when did I actually get into books? I remember my dad also telling us bedtime stories, reading us bedtime stories, and I remember him also telling us folklore stories about a monkey called Wakaima. Anyway, so that also made me get closer to the whole thing about reading, because again, these reading stories to us and telling us stories took you to another place altogether, and I enjoyed someone reading. It was very soothing. But if I am to say when I truly started reading books and reading a lot of books, is when we moved to England and I started a new school, and this was about when I was 9. Started a new school and I got a reading list of about, I don't know, 20 books or more perhaps. And this reading books, I was I was so keen to read these books. And not only that, this was when I truly had access, serious access to books because of the school library. So I started reading these books, and I had so many different types of books. There was Swallows and Amazons by, can't quite remember, Arthur Ransom, I think it was. Enid Blyton's Famous Five. What else did we have? We had Anne of Green Gables. I read all the Anne of Green Gables books. Little Women, I read all the books. What else? Pollyanna, because I had to be there. Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte. I don't think I read any of the other Brontes. Charles Dickens. Read Robinson Crusoe was on the list, but didn't really enjoy that one. Roald Dahl's books, like James and the Giant Peach. That was a great book, I must admit. Who else? What else did we have? The Green Grass of Wyoming and Black Beauty. I think those those horse book series, I think every girl in certain cultures must go through the horses books for some crazy reason. But still, I did enjoy them. They had their time and I enjoyed them. Becca by Daphne du Maurier. Then we also had on the list, there were also books that covered animals like Gerald Durrell's Sue in My Luggage and the rest of his other books. Watership Down, that was a great book. Even the film was good, but I don't think I could watch the film again. It was way too sad. I had Jack London, Call of the Wild. I think I read some other books by Jack London. I had The Hobbit. I don't think I had Lord of the Rings on my list, and I doubt I'd have read it just because that one had way too much description for me at that time. I'm not such a descriptive person. So this list anyway, it introduced me to so much and so many different genres. And then I had E.S. Nesbitt's Five Children in It, The Secret Garden. The Secret Garden was so magical for me, so I was into magic and fantasy at the time. Ursula Le Guin's Wizards of Earthsea, great books. And then there was the local library. There I could also borrow books. And then I had a mobile library. There the library stopped somewhere just very close to our door. And then I would buy books when I got my pocket money. And at that time I was so into Susan Cooper's The Dark is Rising. Great book. Great series, I mean. Joan Aiken. Anyway, so that was what actually got me into reading. I was so hooked and I was so transported. And I also have to mention, at this time my whole family read, so it wasn't that I read on my own. Well, I read on my own because we didn't really discuss our books, but we all read. But one book that I can say we all actually read and thought it was a great book, and this was about when I was 12, that was Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire. An Interview with a Vampire, it wasn't because I was into vampire books or anything like that, or horror or anything like that. I think it just happened to be around because my second eldest brother had bought it cheaply, and perhaps I had nothing else to read. But this was such a good book. I can't actually remember the story. I just remember that it was so interesting that I read it from cover to cover. And I think when we talked about it recently, we all actually said, "Now this book was good. This book was good." And that has to be said. Has to be something, because I don't think Interview with the Vampire was written for kids. So yeah, I was well impressed with that one. So yeah, and I think here, if I was going to have a, what would you ask your favourite booktuber? I think if I ever had to ask a question, I would go back in time, ask whoever had written that list and ask them, how did they manage, or what were they thinking when they put all these books on the list, because it was so creative. There wasn't any just one genre, there were different ones, and most of those books were, for me personally, they were very worth reading. So I would have to thank them, because I think that list actually made me the reader I am today. Well, I don't know if I would have read books if I didn't have that list. And it was also because I guess at the time when we were in England, I didn't have that many friends anyway, because we just arrived in England. I have to say there were no authors of colour on just that list, but I guess it's not very surprising that school had no people of colour, apart from me, for a while. Things have changed now, but back in the day, that's the way it was. Anyway, now moving on. Where do you read? Anyway, really. I mean, just now I'm in the early stages of getting back into reading. I do try and read when I'm cooking because I find cooking so boring. Oh. But anyway, yeah. So it works quite well when I'm cooking in between the stirring or whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing. I do read in bed before I go to bed. Not all the time, but sometimes, because it's a good way of relaxing and it's a good way of getting on with my book. I'm looking forward to reading on public transport. I do actually take a book with me nowadays so that if I'm just standing in a queue, for example, if you're shopping or something, I can read in that queue, or I read on my phone, which I never used to do. So this is a new thing. I've realised that I can actually use my phone to read books. So, yeah, as I said, welcome to the world of 2023. Yeah, so I actually read when I get a chance. I don't have any specific reading place. And this, not even this. This is, sometimes I sit here, but no, it's very rare. So I just read anywhere. No dedicated spots. What kind of books do you read? I like magic and fantasy, but not too much fantasy. I suppose if I talk about fantasy, I'm talking about fantasy like Ursula Le Guin. I do know there was a YouTuber who pulled out Philip Pullman, and I must read. I've read those books, but again, that was introduced to me by my eldest brother, and those I found were good. The dark magic books, those were good. I tried to watch the movie, but nah, the movie didn't do it justice at all. So, nope. Sci-fi, magic, fantasy. I haven't read a lot of sci-fi. I used to read sci-fi just because my brothers used to read sci-fi. So I read a few books that they had. But I don't think I have personally myself bought a sci-fi book. All the ones I've read, all the ones that are there, I've inherited from my brother. But they were actually good. I mean, they read a lot of E. Doc Smith. They've read The Foundations. I've read Dune, but I don't think I read it with the understanding that I might have now, so perhaps I'll read it now. The Foundations book, Isaac Asimov, they've read, so I'm not sure I've read them, but they're here, so I can read them. What other books do I read? I went through a phase of Mills and Boons. Those books, they were the kind of story, you know how it's going to start, you know how it's going to end. So there were no surprises, but that was a good thing about them. I read them for a certain thing. Harlequin, not so keen on Harlequin. Mills and Boon, yes, because it wasn't so, there was no steamy romance. It was just, yeah, the romance was there. Not so much of a romance book if it's not in the story. The story has to be more than the romance. So it's not about the romance. So those type of books I don't actually go for. But I do like romance in a story. What other books? I don't tend to read a lot of memoirs, but I'm going to try and read a few memoirs. My plan is, we've got a lot of books in this house that I've inherited from my brother, that we've inherited from the house, people before. Some of them in Swedish, but some of them are in English. And some books that are my husband's from when he was younger. Well, student, I suppose. So my plan is to try and read those books as well. That is my reading list. And read a new book, a more up-to-date book. And I must actually start reading a bit more African authors, because that hasn't been so much on my list. I've read a few, but I want to actually read more. So, and I've even got a book here. Let's see if I can see that one there. It's called 48 Guns for the General. And this book, I don't even know how it came into my hands, but it's an old book, and you can tell by this cover. But back in those days, this is how the African publisher, African Writer Series it's called. This is what all the books look like, all the covers. They're truly not something that I'll pick up as a child and think, I'm gonna read that. No. I'm sorry, I do judge books by the cover, and this one did nothing for me. However, I'm gonna try, because now I've grown up, I'm gonna try and read more of these books. And the good thing about this book, at the end of it, It's actually got a very long list of possible books that I can read. So I'm going to do that as well. This is becoming too long, so I'm going to read that. I'm going to try and read one book a week, 2 weeks. All right, that's all. Thank you for keeping up with me to the end. Oh yeah, and I want to try and get some poetry into my reading also. Bye.